Hey everyone, welcome. Let's dive right into today's explainer. We're going to unpack a really intriguing source text to figure out exactly how the Krishna consciousness tradition measures and, frankly, understands spiritual growth. It's a fascinating deep dive that breaks down a practitioner's journey from their very first tentative steps, literally all the way up to a state of absolute mastery.
So how do you actually measure a person's spiritual advancement? It's a profound question, right? I mean, how do you quantify something as internal and intangible as spiritual growth? Well, the text we're exploring today actually answers this by outlining a very specific three-rung ladder of devotion. It essentially takes all the guesswork right out of the equation, giving us a clear structural framework to evaluate exactly where someone stands on their spiritual journey.
To truly grasp this framework, we've got a clear roadmap for today. We'll look at the call to spiritual life, the core practice of chanting, and then we'll climb the three distinct stages of devotion: the neophyte, the intermediate, and finally, the master.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the call to spiritual life, and how someone actually enters this path.
The whole foundation of this journey rests on a concept called dīkṣā, which means spiritual initiation. But according to the source, this is way more than just some passing ceremony. It's a massive, deeply psychological pivot. It's defined as the process where you gradually lose interest in material enjoyment. The text describes this profound shift as moving away from material darkness, which they call Uttama, and stepping directly into a state of transcendental light, known as Ut.
And the source material gives us this brilliant, real-world example of what this psychological shift actually looks like. It highlights a phenomenon observed in Europe and America, where students from incredibly wealthy, respectable families were literally trading their luxurious living conditions for hard, uncomfortable temple floors. Now, why does that matter? Because happily abandoning all that comfort just to associate with devotees, known as Vaishnavas, and to pursue this transcendental science is undeniable proof of that internal shift. It shows the change is genuine.
But hold on, this isn't just a casual commitment you can make on a whim. To even qualify for this initiation, the text lays out some incredibly strict prerequisites. You have to practice austerity, maintain celibacy, and completely control both the mind and the body. On top of all that, you have to be deeply, genuinely inquisitive about the absolute truth. So you can't just be making a fashionable show of spiritual life for the aesthetic, you have to fundamentally desire that transformation.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, the practice of chanting, which is really the core foundation here.
So, the absolute core practice of this entire movement, it's the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra on beads. And the magic number here is 16. That's the minimum daily prescription of rounds. Interestingly enough, the source notes a very practical reason for this specific number. It was set specifically because people in Western countries generally struggle to concentrate for long periods of time. So keeping that cultural context in mind, 16 rounds became the accessible baseline for daily practice.
But get this, here is where we see a fascinating contrast. While 16 is the Western prescription, the historical standard mentioned by past masters was actually 64 rounds of chanting. That equals a staggering 100,000 names every single day. The text points out that falling short of this technically means a practitioner is considered fallen. Because of that incredibly high bar, basically everyone is relying heavily on the immense mercy of the Lord to advance, rather than just flawlessly executing the rules.
Now, if those numbers sound a bit intimidating, the text balances it out with some profound grace. It quotes Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who states that if someone genuinely says the name even once, they should be accepted and respected as standing out from the common group. It's a really beautiful reminder that even the absolute slightest genuine attempt commands immense respect from others on the path. The effort itself is deeply sacred, no matter how small.
To put this into a modern perspective, the source shares this highly practical anecdote about a famous English musician who became attracted to the chanting. He even embedded the holy names right into his commercial records and offers respect at his home. The text argues that because he shows such a high estimation for the practice, he is genuinely advancing and absolutely must be shown respect. It just proves that sincere, gradual advancement happens everywhere, in all sorts of forms.
Which perfectly sets up our next point. Let's look at Section 3, Stage 1, the neophyte, the very first rung of the spiritual ladder.
It all kicks off with a concept called shraddha, which translates to confident, firm faith. But there is a catch. The text emphasizes that true shraddha means accepting the authoritative texts, like the Bhagavad Gita, in their absolute totality. It's a package deal, you know? You can't just pick the parts you like and reject the rest based on your own whimsical interpretation. It requires total, uncompromised acceptance.
This foundational faith officially puts you on step 1. You become a Kaniṣṭha adhikari. I know, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it essentially means you are in the neophyte stage. At this point, the text describes your faith as soft and pliable. You're on the ladder, you're doing the work, but your conviction is still developing and can be swayed by outside influences. And keep in mind, every single person begins their journey right here on this exact elementary platform.
All right, let's step it up to section 4, stage 2, intermediate devotion, where that soft faith actually begins to solidify. Now, this part of the text is actually super encouraging. To move up the ladder, you don't need to be some perfect textual scholar. Your knowledge of the complex scriptures might not even be very strong yet. What actually elevates you to this intermediate stage is becoming completely undeterred and staunchly faithful in your daily practice of chanting. Consistency and faith absolutely trump mere academic mastery here.
So, boom, you've hit step 2, the madhyama adhikari stage. The text calls this person Shraddhavan, a staunchly faithful person. You are fully serious, firmly planted in your practice, and now you're considered a true, solid candidate for reaching the ultimate spiritual goal. The roots have taken hold. Your faith is no longer pliable, it's completely steadfast.
And finally, let's explore the ultimate destination. Section 5, Stage 3, the Master, the absolute highest platform.
At this peak level, it's a total psychological shift, like a complete rewiring. The text explains that the practitioner fully realizes their core identity as an eternal servitor, and because of this profound awakening, they literally lose interest in absolutely everything except their spiritual service. Their only remaining business, their sole obsession in life, becomes devising compassionate ways to spread this consciousness all over the world. It is a state of absolute, 100% dedication.
Which brings us to the very top of our ladder, the Uttama adhikari. This is a highly advanced, fully realized master. And the text gives us a very practical way to recognize them. They are known by their actual ability to convert fallen souls and bring others onto the path. They strictly and effortlessly follow all the regulative principles, and their association is something you should actively seek out if you're serious about your own journey.
Now, why does all this categorization matter? Well, it's actually vital. The text explicitly warns against imitating an advanced devotee, and it lays out a very strict rule for seeking guidance. If you accept a neophyte or an intermediate devotee as your primary spiritual master, the text bluntly says you just cannot advance very well toward the ultimate goal. The guidance is insufficient. So it is incredibly critical that a disciple carefully identifies and accepts only a true Uttama adhikari to receive actual, self-realized guidance.
So as we wrap up this explainer, the text leaves us with a pretty heavy but absolutely necessary question to ponder. When we look at this entire ladder of devotion, from that initial psychological shift through the daily chanting, past the neophyte and intermediate stages, we really have to evaluate our own spiritual influences. Are the voices you're listening to truly on that highest platform, or are they stuck on the lower rungs? It's a vital question for anyone who is genuinely serious about their spiritual advancement. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today, and keep seeking that true transcendental knowledge.